I'm Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., the host of African American Legends. On today's African American Legends, we'll present the speeches by Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott and Reverend James Forbes, given at the concluding luncheon of the recent conference on priorities for New Yorkers of African descent during the Bloomberg administration.
Our next speaker will hear this many, many times, probably too many times. But I'm just going to say how proud I am to be able to introduce one of my colleagues, one of the people who have provided leadership in our community for many, many years, still young, still vibrant, still speaking up. Need more be said. Let's welcome Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott.
Sit down. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Roscoe. Wow, I appreciate that. It's weird having this title in front of you, and I mean, it's just Dennis. I'm just Dennis, basically. Today has been really a busy day, and I started my day out this morning, first with a meeting with the mayor and all the deputy mayors, but then ran from the meeting back out to Queens because I was able to convince the mayor for his first school visit. He went to my elementary school. And it was really just a nice feeling to bring the mayor to your former elementary school. And it's a perfect tie-in to the topic about working with the Bloomberg administration and vis-a-vis the Urban Issues Group, because you have direct access to the administration. And we need to have direct access with all of you because we're facing tough times. And we're facing this unique balance of trying to deal with a $4 billion deficit, but at the same time maintain the quality of services and the sensitivity of services to all of the communities throughout New York City. And how do we achieve that delicate balance? And one of the ways to achieve that delicate balance is to make sure that we have maximum communication with each other. But at the same time, when it's involving an economic development issue, you don't go through Dennis Walcott. You go through Dan Doctoroff, who is the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development. When it's an operational issue involving an agency, you don't necessarily come to me. You go to Mark Shaw, who's the Deputy Mayor for Operations. It's involving legal affairs. You go to Carol Roman Robles, who's the Deputy Mayor for Legal Affairs. It's involving culture and parks and cuts in the budget along that line. You go to Patricia Harris, who's the Deputy Mayor for Administration, which covers those particular areas. And always you go directly to the mayor. You will always have an ear with me, but I think it's important as we broaden the relationship and talking about the relationship with the administration that all of us are aware of the different portfolio responsibilities of each of the deputy mayors, so that way you're dealing with the appropriate person. You should be dealing around economic development issues and talking about small business development, talking about how grants are being allocated, talking about the construction projects that are out there, talking about the issues of capital development with Dan. What I promise you, what I will commit, is to make sure that you have all the information. You know who all the commissioners are, who all the first deputy commissioners are, so that way you have their phone numbers and you have access points to call them. That way when you're advocating on behalf of our constituency group, your constituency group, whatever that constituency group may be, it's well represented to the appropriate person. When it's time to beat me up, I will be there for you to beat me up. I don't have any problems with that because I knew once I stepped into this job, after the first couple of weeks of all the nice things that people are saying, and I want to thank all of you for saying nice things now, because you're going to be kicking my butt later on. And that's the reality. Anytime we have to face difficult decisions on how you balance a $4 billion deficit, one of the things I'm going to try to make sure we don't balance it on the backs of the poor. Plain and simple. We don't balance it on the backs of the people. We have it balanced on the backs of the poor. Will I be successful? Not all the time. And that's going to be the reality. Now, I got to be perfectly clear, and then I'll wrap up. And if you want, Roscoe, take a couple of questions before Jim comes on. And I want you to be very clear. I'll try never, ever to be hypocritical around positions. I'll try never to be duplicitous around issues and policies. And for those who know that at one point, when I was a member of the Board of Education appointed by David Jenkins, I supported a board. But now I'm really not there. And it's not just because I'm working for the mayor and carrying the mayor's message, but I think we need to talk about how we build in accountability. Just because you may want to try to get control by the mayor doesn't mean you're going to improve accountability to the system. I mean, one does not necessarily go with the other. My bottom line is it's about the children and making sure we improve our educational outcomes for the children who are out there. So I just want to thank the Urban Issues Group for inviting me to speak, and it's really weird just to be here to speak to all of you because you guys are the pros. You're the experts in your field. You're smarter than I am. You know way more than I do. I just happen to be lucky and blessed to be in a position right now, but you guys know what the deal is.
To wrap us up, I have asked my friend and advocate and worker in the vineyards, the Reverend James Forbes, senior minister of Riverside Church, who does us proud every time an issue comes up and every time he addresses it. He's gotten to the point where you all you need to say in introducing him is the Reverend James Forbes.
I would like to thank Roscoe and the Center for this meeting. This is the meeting I've been waiting for a long time. A meeting where we get together and talk about what we need to do to advance the cause together that we would be interested in alone, but by ourselves cannot move it. To get us together from the various centers of our influence and our vocations is a good sign. I'm excited. If I were in church, I'd be singing, "So glad I'm here, so glad I'm here." Now, what I want to do is, as quickly as I can, to kind of give you an outline of the fact that I preached a sermon once on stewardship, and the deacon said, "Pastor, that's a good sermon." Said, "But you're going to have to preach it 7 times. It is illusory to assume that we can have one meeting to talk about priorities and that's going to fix it. And that's been a temptation to sort of say, thank God we went to the meeting, we got it fixed. What we are talking about is going to take a commitment to say this is the beginning, and we have to meet over and over again with a sense of urgency all the way through. So I'm going to, instead of trying to be a speaker, try to read these notes because they include the kinds of things I'm going to want to be talking about as we meet from time to time. So here we are. More important than anything else is the fact that we are together. The priority is getting together. That's the priority. Anything else we list in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that did not begin with getting together would not be effective anyway. Now we have come together out of what I think we all know is Du Bois' double consciousness. Conscious of our being a part of universal humankind and conscious of our Afrocentric or African heritage. And there are times when we are not able to see clearly because we haven't figured out whether or not this blur in our vision is because in some way we ought to be either Africans or we ought to be part of humanity. And until we get that straightened out about how being black, African American, even color, does not in any way reduce the importance of our acknowledgement that we are fundamentally human beings of a particular variety. So my sense is we now are called upon to know how to stop being cross-eyed, blurred. I am a part of humanity. I am African American. Anybody else from any other culture that does not understand the combination of 2 eyes being required to give us the focus by which we can see clearly, they are missing out. If you are white and you think white is primarily what you are in a serious sighting dysfunction. It is important for us because black folks that have some sensitivity about us being black and don't know how we're going to relate to us being everything that everybody else is, that gets in the way of our figuring out how to do. For an example, black folks going to talk to a Jewish mayor with any questions about, is this a special occasion, that out of particularity we enter into conversation about the broad prospects of well-being for the whole city. We got to get that straightened out. And I guess I've been working on it because I work in an integrated situation where there are black folks and white folks, and sometimes because it's integrated, I mute my blackness. And sometimes because it's integrated, I'm going to be for the generality and don't even think about the needs for delivering to my folks. Today, if I don't leave one thing with you, it is I would like to offer a perspective that allows us as black folks, African Americans, to be fully back, to get our agenda together, to mobilize our strength to advance it without in any way undercutting our right to the resources and to be heard by the broader community of which we are a part. So now we can focus. Black folks, I'm so glad there are few white people in here because I want to announce that in the light of the recent scholarship in terms of the evolution of the species called Homo sapiens, it has been discovered all over again that black people are the first family of the universe. I just want to say, what do I mean by that? I mean by that when you start tracing the evolution of the animal kingdom, that the first human beings that ever walked the face of the earth were from African continent. So that means that everybody else that exists and calls himself or herself a human being are descendants from us. I want you to get that very clear. If that is not clear, it will rob us of the perspective we need as we begin to engage in coalitional conversations. We are the first family, and we proved our intelligence by having two eyes. And if you block this one, no matter how good an eye it is, you are not seeing clearly. But if you can bring two eyes to every situation, I am uniquely black, blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. But I am also a human being for which there is no line of demarcation. Let it be known that for every white person walking on the earth, or Asian person, or even Native American, they've got my genetic background as the foundation of whatever they are. That is to say, we are no longer talking about we are all made of the one blood. We talked about that years ago. But now that we're getting the Genome Project moving along, I created out of my Afrocentric being the genetic composition and the DNA that everybody else is either a mutation of or a further development of. You all hear what I'm trying to say? I'm really trying to... One universe. The truth of the matter is everybody has a particularity and everybody has a universality if they see in straight. We got to help folks see straight. That's a priority, and we got to begin at home. I'll tell you why. There was once a time when all Africans could fly. But due to the loss of faith in the Great Spirit and our sinfulness, we lost the capacity to fly. And there was once a plantation on John's Island where all the black people were taken, and they were worked from sunrise to sunset. One time in the group was a young black woman who was brought to the plantation and forced out into the fields to work like all the rest. She gave her baby her breast to suck while she tried to work, but the sun was too hot for her and she fell down. The driver came over and kicked her and slashed at her, and she got up. But as she got up, she turned to an old man and said, "Father, is it time? He said, no, my daughter, it is not yet time. Then she went on working, but the sun was too hot for her, and she fell down once again. And he came over and he kicked at her, and he slashed at her, and she got up and asked the old man one more time, Father, is it time? And he says, yes, my daughter, it is time. And she heard the brother say in the field, "Coolly bar, coolly bar." And when he said that, they all just flew off into the ridge of the horizon with the baby at her side. The white people, the owners and the drivers and the overseer came over to see what was going on. They did not understand the language of the mothers and fathers. And so they took a stick and swung it at the black man who had said "Coolie bar." And he just smiled, a broad smile, and looked around at all of the people and said "Coolie bar." And they all just took off into the ridge of the horizon. This is a story, Langston Hughes and Anna Bontemps in the book of Negro folklore. And the problem with this story is that for 25 years, I have told this story as a black story. Now I'm learning that it ain't no black story. All humankind lost the capacity to fly. And until they hear "Coolie bar," they are not going to be able to be all they were meant to be. This is why black folks are being called to service in a time like this. We need to say "Coolie bar." Coolie bar in the black community, Coolie bar in the white community, the Asian community, the Spanish community, the Polynesian community, and the Soviet Union, the Commonwealth of Independent States. We need, because we were the first citizens of this Mother Earth. We were the first inhabitants of this earth. Black agenda is not to go down there talking to Bloomberg just about what to do about black folks. If they figure out how to do what is helpful to us, they will have figured out what's good for the whole species of Homo sapiens. That's the new reality. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If this is our vocation, if it is our vocation to enable people to see what the action ought to be, then I think there's a second thing in a poetic vein that I try to get over to black folks. Talking about priority, the next priority, other than just gathering, is when we gather, it ain't no time for foolishness. We got to cut out the traditional games we play. The whole universe is waiting for us mother black folks to help the rest of the civilization to figure out how to get it on and how to get it together. Therefore, I quote these words when I preach sometimes. It's called "No Time for Foolishness." Airplanes falling, peace talk stalling, smallpox, anthrax looking like the flu, throat grabbing, backstabbing, kids getting high on drugs and glue, short grades, long grades, you never know which, electrocuting men just to see them twitch, cops profiling, Supreme Court smiling, politicians playing games just to be in control, wealthy getting richer, poor getting poorer, with rats and homeless living in the sewer, housing prices going sky high, nothing to rent and can't afford to buy. Affirmative action under attack. You bring your money home, but it's a hole in the sack. Spousal, parental, systems abuse. Sometimes you wonder, what's the use? AIDS keeps spreading like an eating cancer. Nations call for help, but there is no answer. Races and religions, all self-contained. High blood pressure from too much strain. Why are our families falling apart? We went searching for pleasure and lost our heart. Hope and love are in short supply. We've got to find our purpose or else we'll die. Now, I don't mean to be uncouth. All I'm asking for is tell me the truth. What time is it, y'all? No time for foolishness. That's the way it needs to be. When we work together, now, in terms of getting our priorities together, when we get together, we really need to figure out all over again who are our leaders. We'll talk to the older people here. Since I have reached 66, I can talk like on the way for senior citizenhood. Who ever heard of a black cadre of leadership, African Americans, being so busy just surviving that they don't know how to gather the younger folks to figure out how we transfer the meaning of the word Coolibah. And I have been looking around for the so-called black leadership in New York City to get us together in a meaningful way to figure out who are our leaders, who speaks for us, who convenes us to raise the interrogative agenda so that together we can get the new indicatives of the day. I think that the issue has got to be, somehow there's got to be the calling of the councils of the elders, and the elders can do it by themselves. And it is a priority. It is a priority that we figure out how it is done. Also, I think it is very clear that whenever you all do gather us, there must be some African priests and priestesses, because I hate to say this, if for 8 years a people in terms of public posture have been marginalized and demonized and victimized, even if there's new leadership, there's no need to go into the new meeting unless there are some exorcisms. Namely, the truth of the matter is, did you hear that when this man said Coolibah, they got sticks to hit him? You will not be able to represent black interests or African American interests as we engage in the larger conversation without taking great risks. Great risks. So the question is not only who are our leaders, but who are our leaders that are willing to take the risks to speak the wisdom that our mothers and fathers have given us. I'm a preacher man, and at church, we ask people to tithe. I would like to ask African Americans who are successful and African Americans who are not successful, in the interest of fulfilling our vocation as the first family of the universe, to tithe money and time and energy. We give any, I don't care how high the black person gets in his corporation. We claim 10% of your time and your resources with your church, of course, and with this community, because we cannot fulfill this vocation. But I'm not going to stop there. When we get through doing it ourselves, I would like to ask Mr. Bloomberg, who gave $70 million worth of his money to help provide leadership, I want him to call other corporations to say, we got a $4 billion deficit, but we got some people who had a deficit before the deficit was a deficit, and that we who have somewhat better success need to come together and make resources available. That's why I'm so excited that Sunday in my church, instead of just preaching and carrying on, we will be able to announce $10 million from the portfolio of our congregation for the upbuilding of the community, so we can then ask corporations to come and help us to do the same. Some of us have made it up north, but there's a north and a south up north. South of success, south of subsistence necessities. And it is our job, for those of us who may have some semblance of freedom, to organize the Underground Railroad, to get them through. And that is a wonderful thing I heard the deputy mayor say. First of all, he said he didn't get elected to be deputy of the color. I'm glad he said that. But then he suggests that he will not let that budget be balanced on the back of the poor. He made that commitment, which means that's what's in his heart. But it won't happen unless our hands and feet are there to sustain that kind of commitment. Now, when we get to the table finally, I am excited to announce what we bring that a lot of folks have forgotten about. We, if we are faithful to our African past, we have had a Head Start program. We've been doing it longer than anybody else in the world. We have had a Head Start program on what I call a humanizing sensibility. Secondly, we have a spiritualizing sensibility. We derive our existence, when you hear the African stories, we are all offsprings of divinity. And we also know that God don't like ugly. And therefore, we understand that kind of thing. So we bring a spiritualizing proclivity. We also sense that there's no dichotomy between secular and sacred. We also bring extraordinary ecological sensibility, and I'm glad for that, because now we understand that underground fires all across the nation and around the world are emitting things that are going to make it more difficult for us to be able to survive on this planet. But we bring ecological sensitivity. And having had a head start in it, you gotta convince folks that when black folks listen to who they really are, they have a wisdom which, when made available, will make for a more human society wherever they go. And if we have been in some way distorted out of a double consciousness and have declined to the bestiality of a kind of mindless greed and stuff, that really when we listen to our mother Africa, we bring some sensibilities. The city of New York then, when it thinks about rebuilding, is not wise if it does not understand that one of the first agendas is how do we get those who have been marginalized for 8 years to come to clarity about their recognition of our worth. Well, they don't come to clarity until we get that clarity. And when we get to the table, it ought to be because we have set ourselves there as representatives of God's good grace. Now, I'm closing because the lady's waiting for me. And I like usually to close by calling on the help for God to come and help us. But Peter Gomes, the chapel preacher at Harvard Memorial Chapel, sent me a Christmas card. And it had something on it that I want to read for you, and then I'm through. We keep waiting for God to help us out. And I'm in the God business. I'm going to be talking about God someday. I'm in the God business. But here's what he asks in this card from a student who graduated, I guess, around 1886. That's an important year, you know, that year. But anyway, here's what it asks. When will he come? He'll come tomorrow, if you will, but cease your idle sitting still. Yes, he will come today. He will not come in clouds, but through your doing all that you can do to help the right always. Do honest work, and to the truth be true. And God already has appeared in you.
Conductor of the Underground Railroad, Reverend James Forbes. Let's go.
Today's African American Legends has focused on priorities for New Yorkers of African descent during the Bloomberg administration. We look forward to continuing the dialogue on these important issues.